This week, we welcome Hacia Atherton, High Performance Culture Strategist at Hacia Atherton International, to discuss how unexamined leadership behaviors create blind spots that cost talent and profit. In the Leadership and Communications segment, CEOs and CISOs differ on AI security value and risks. You don't say. How to strategically balance cybersecurity investments, succeeding as an outsider in a legacy culture, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Zero trust is clearly the future as threats get faster, quieter, and harder to detect. But implementing it shouldn't disrupt the business. ThreatLocker enforces default denied execution in a way that remains enterprise-ready, scalable, and operationally clean. Unknown software is stopped cold, trusted apps stay contained, and drift is locked down across the environment. It's zero trust that works in real enterprises and prepares you for the threats ahead. See why CISOs are adopting it at securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker. Right now, with Tanium, IT and security teams complete patching programs in minutes, not weeks. Reduce software vulnerabilities by up to 97%. Cut incident response times by up to 99%. This is not just IT, this is autonomous IT. Making business, your business, unstoppable. Tanium, autonomous IT, unstoppable business. See more at securityweekly.com/Tanium. Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 433, recorded February 2nd, 2026. I am your host, Matt Alderman. Yes, I finally made it back from Mexico. I know, 2 extra days in Mexico. How horrible is that? However, I did come home to a lot of snow and ice in Texas, which was not fun. Joining me for
you have a great tan, Matt.
Oh, yeah, a little bit. I got to cover it. It's too cold, Jason. Joining me remotely for this interview segment are my co-hosts. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque. Congratulations on the Patriots getting all the way through the gauntlet.
I know it's been a little while, Matt, and we just kept winning while you were gone. So, hey, I'll take it.
You want me to go back to Mexico for the Super Bowl this weekend?
No, it'll be fine.
Okay.
Well, it's all good. But Patriots this Sunday, baby. Super Bowl Sunday.
Yes.
I can't believe the NFL season's practically over.
Almost over. Yeah.
Crazy.
Have to cancel my Fox One membership. I only watch.
I know, right?
I only watch it for football, guys. After that, I'm done for the rest of the year. So
I love it.
Also joining Mr. Ben Carr. Rumors are you're in the house.
Yeah, I am. I'm actually in the old house doing this episode today, but very soon I will be have my desk set up to be over in the new one. So
nice.
Got to do the first weekend over there. So just issues with plumbers and other things, but all's good. So thank you for checking in.
Good. Well, you're going to have to keep up with me in summer on our kind of views here.
I'm very close. It's very similar, actually.
Oh, awesome.
Oh, this is exciting.
Yeah,
Jason.
Yeah,
you're
we
gonna
all
change
have
it
our
up.
office
I need to get a bookshelf instead of a bar. Are you kidding me? Come on.
Okay, fair enough. And last but not least, Summer Fowler. Welcome, Summer. It's been a long time since I've seen you. It's been weeks.
I know. Welcome back to both of us. I was here last week, but you were still away. Big things this weekend. We got a puppy, so 6-month-old rescue boxer. So you know how my life is going to go for several months. And Punxsutawney Phil saw his shadow back in the underground for 6 more weeks. So sorry, everybody, but looks like we're going to be bundled up like this for a while more.
I hate that groundhog.
Yeah, so do I. Where are the clouds when you need them? Come on.
Right.
All right, one quick announcement, and then we'll get into the interview. Security Weekly listeners save $100 on their RSAC 2026 All Access Pass. RSAC 2026 conference will take place March 23rd to the 26th in San Francisco. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC26 and use the code 56U5 SecWeekly. I'll be there. Hope to see you there as well. Hacia Atherton is a high-performance culture strategist, author, and international speaker, working with leaders and organizations operating under sustained pressure. She's the author of The $1 Billion Blind Spot, a 3-time Amazon bestseller in strategic management and behavior psychology, which exposes the hidden leadership behaviors that quietly erode performance, trust, and profit. Hacia's philosophy is simple. Culture is not soft. Leadership behavior is never neutral. And building people with intention is how high-performing organizations are sustained. Hacia, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Yeah, so this show is unique in that we talk leadership and communication on this show. And so when we got the opportunity to bring you on, you fit squarely into the leadership side of this for sure. And when I read your background, I was kind of intrigued, right? You have a very interesting story of how you ended up where you are today. Why don't you start with a little background on your history?
Yes, so I am originally an accountant, certified practicing accountant, and that was a career path that I chose because I found it kind of very easy. I could just go to work, do my job, and leave, because at the time I was a high-level dressage rider with the goal to represent my country, which is Australian, if you haven't picked up on the accent yet. So I wanted the green and gold jacket in dressage. And I was getting very close to that goal and training for the World Equestrian Games when my young horse actually reared up and I fell off, and all 600 kilos, so that's going to be like 1,300 pounds, landed on top of me and completely crushed my body, my soul, my world, and everything. So that led to 6 months in hospital with doctors telling me I may never walk again in any meaningful way. So to have your identity of being a high-performing athlete very much stripped away from you, I became very depressed, very anxious, obviously in a lot of pain, a lot of uncertainty of what my life was going to be like. And so my psych team actually introduced me to positive psychology to be able to help me get through a lot of the hardships that I was facing. And I absolutely fell in love with it. It completely transformed how I was showing up in hospital. I started to thrive in hospital. I found joy and laughter. I look forward to people coming into my room once I really understood the importance of high quality connections. And people always think, what a tragic time being in hospital. I turned 30 in hospital, and it was the most magical day because of how the hospital really rallied around me. The catering staff made a special Hacia birthday. So every person in that hospital was eating my birthday cake and celebrating my birthday alongside me, whether they knew me or not. They were all celebrating Hacia's birthday cake. And so that really started the journey of positive psychology. And hospital, even if you're a patient, that is a team. You have your head doctor, the leader. You've got all of the moving pieces of your physical therapist, your pain management, your psych team. So for 6 months, I was very, very integrated into a high-performing team of rehabilitating myself. I was the client. And what I really saw, the power of positive psychology, is it gave my medical team the courage to really push themselves, think of innovative ways, because I was not giving up on my goal of walking. And having that ambitious goal, I really pushed my medical team outside of their comfort zone. And we all started practicing the principles of positive psychology that my psych team was teaching me. And then my doctors was like, wow, this is actually something we should be implementing with all of our patients. So I kind of became the reverse leader and started leading my medical team because I was like, nope, this is the direction we're going, and I'm going to lead you in that direction, whether you like it or not.
A very interesting leadership story, right? Taking your own kind of care and rehabilitation yourself, right? Because normally most people would be just like, wait for the doctors to tell you what to do next. But it sounds like you took charge of that, which transformed your life, because now the things you're doing all stem from that original experience, doesn't it?
Very much so. And when you have so much autonomy taken away from you, like I couldn't move. To leave my hospital bed, a whole medical team would have to come, do checklists, transfer me onto a little gurney, strap me down like cargo and push me outside if I wanted to go outside, or even to have a shower, they would transfer me onto this very cold plastic bed thing, push me through the hospital naked with a towel on top of me into this wash bay style room and hose me down like a racehorse, dry me off, push me back to the room and put me back in the bed. So when you're so kind of dehumanized in that way, it's very easy to just fall into not taking control of what you can take control of. But positive psychology taught me, yes, there's still things I can control. Sometimes that was only my breath. And I could lie there and I was in so much pain, but I could control my breath. I could do box breathing or different things. And that really started to build my courage of what I can and can't control, focus on what I can control. And in high pressure organizations as leaders, I teach that a lot. What can we control right now? And they can always control their breath, especially if they're in a meeting that they feel is getting out of control. To anchor themselves for 60 seconds back into that breath starts that courage of like, I can control my breath, therefore I can control my emotions, I can control my thoughts, and you can grow that sense of control from there. And yeah, that very much ambitious. Every day I had to put 3 goals on my board, and it might be sit up for 30 seconds, I'll learn to transfer into a car and then walk. From day one, my goal was always to walk again. And that was hard because the doctors were telling me, like, this is something you need to let go of. You're setting yourself up for disappointment. And I would push back with that reverse leadership going, no, your goal as my medical team is to show up and work out how we achieve that goal. So we're going to work together, teach me everything I need to know about pain, about everything I need to know to achieve that. And then you, as my team, need to work out how you push yourselves to work out how we achieve this together.
You mentioned something that I wanted to talk about today, honestly, and you talked about high pressure culture. And to coin Matt, I want to double click on that a little bit, because in cybersecurity, just like the medical field, or if you're a patient, obviously in your situation, high pressure, right? You're under high pressure. You want to be able to walk again. The medical team wants to get you to the outcome where you need to be. Many times in cybersecurity, our teams are in this high pressure type culture. How can leaders start switching the mindset of their teams, of their organization, of their culture, to shift to a high performance culture versus a high pressure culture?
I love that. And that's a fantastic question. And I always come back to the concept of yin and yang. So I'll give you an example. When I was in hospital, I would have sunshine for 2 hours on my bed. And I used to show up with such a negative mindset of like, I could be outside running, I could be riding my horses, but I'm stuck here in this hospital bed. And I would be so negative about those 2 hours. Then through practicing the concept of gratitude, which is a big pillar in everything in positive psychology, I flipped that to there's some people right now in an office that has no windows and they can't see this sunshine. Or, there's some people right now that do not have the privilege to lie in this sunshine and read their book or listen to music. So I really started to change my mindset. In the same thing in high pressure cultures, to turn it into high performing cultures, it's showing up with that mindset of like, okay, we're feeling the pressure, but we have the privilege of being the people that can take this pressure. So let's be grateful that we have the skill sets, we have the technology, we have the team. And what do we need to do as a team to communicate effectively and efficiently and respectfully, so we're not actually adding pressure to already a high pressure situation, and show up as the A players to perform under pressure and really anchor yourselves in that deep privilege that you're a human being that can take this pressure, and how do I learn to thrive in that pressure and communicate what I need to thrive in that pressure. So sometimes it might be, hey, we need to step back for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, all breathe, reduce our cortisol levels. I can see we're starting to get really snappy at each other. So let's actually reflect on what we're grateful for as a team and do a gratitude practice and just bring those cortisol levels down.
I love that this is so personal. Like it's such a personal story, and it's about your perseverance through things. It's just an incredible viewpoint. But even more importantly, what I really find striking is you have emerged as a leader in this. And that's really the key, that this isn't even all just about you, right? This is about how does this positive psychology, the element of the right culture, help everyone around you as well. And that's what I think leaders need to understand, that this isn't just going to be some sort of roses and sunshine about yourself. This is about actually being more effective for everyone around you.
Yeah, exactly. And as leaders, we need to gain the skill sets to read the room and know when we need to call, hey, time out. The team is starting to feel that pressure. We're not performing. We're responding to situations. We're not reacting to situations. So what do I need to call in this timeout? Is that we need to get outside and do a walk, a lap around the block, because we've got to move our bodies. Is that, again, going back to that breathing thing? Because when we start getting stressed, we actually stop breathing properly, which then puts our physical bodies in that high pressure thing. So it's understanding what your team needs when it needs it. And as the leader, watching for those physical signs in their physical human bodies that they're starting to react to pressure, not respond to performing.
So I want to click on something you said. I think you said earlier, when I listened to this story, that I thought was really important, is that the position you were in this situation, you didn't really have the power, right? You weren't necessarily the leader. And there were other people who were, I think, traditionally the way we might think about it, more in that leadership role or that position of, hey, this is what we're going to do. And you took that time or found that space to be able to say, no, that's not how we're necessarily going to do it. And you kind of transformed the dynamic. And I think that that's interesting on two levels. One is, typically a lot of people who are in a CISO position or a leadership position, we assume that we know what's going on, but we're dealing with people we need to empower to kind of change that dynamic and bring some of the knowledge that they have as SMEs to that role and be able to kind of lead us on the journey. And at the same time, we're in this weird role where we sit in the middle of that role. And also we're at the C-level table sometimes, or at least we want to be. And we're interacting with maybe the CEO or the CFO who has a lot more perceived power than we do. How does someone transform that dynamic, and how do you encourage your teams to be able to transform that dynamic where you can actually then say, look, we need to approach things in a different way, and I'm going to be a leader in a situation where everybody else may not see me or perceive me as the leader in this role?
And this comes to a very important conversation around the difference between leadership and management. So management has the hierarchy, it has the title, it has, sign off on budgets at certain level. You want to spend 10 grand, that has to go up to the next level. All of those kind of hierarchical mechanisms in organizations, which are important, are tied to titles. Leadership is not tied to a title. Leadership is tied to your strengths and what strengths need to be played in that moment. And that's where it's coming to actually curating your culture and co-designing that culture to understand the strengths of every person in that team and understand when you need a certain leader. So again, in that very high pressure time, if you need to make quick decisions, you need the person who has the brain that can witness patterns very, very quickly, can analyze data very, very quickly, has that gut feel. That might be a more junior person, but in that moment, you need to say, hey, Ben, I know you're the person that can analyze this data very, very quickly. Yes, I'm the CEO, the most senior person here. I need you to come back to me in 30 minutes with an answer because you're the person that's got the answer right now. And I got to step back. What do you need from me to get this answer in 30 minutes? And so that's once you start to understand the power dynamics of leadership is not tied to a title, it's tied to the character skill sets that's needed in that moment to perform.
Love that.
Yeah.
So just to talk about that a little bit more, right? I mean, you've talked about behaviors that erode profit, quietly erode profit, right? And as leaders, we're part of, a leadership team that wants to make our company successful and profitable and have a great culture. Over the course of my career, I've called it death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's all these little things that you don't see that eventually could kill your organization or your culture. Is delegation, what you were just talking about, one of those behaviors? And what are some other behaviors that quietly erode an organization that us as leaders can be thinking about and make sure we're focusing on to continuously improve our teams, our business, our culture?
Yeah. So delegating to people's character strengths, not their title strengths, is one blind spot I see a lot of leaders leading into, going like, well, this is a first year graduate. I can't delegate any responsibility to them, but that graduate might be the person that brings the energy and the motivation and the inspiration. So delegating them to open up what's going to be a high conflict meeting with some of their high energy and their humor or something to shift the energy of that room is a perfect delegation to potentially that first year graduate if they have that character skill sets. So that's definitely delegate to strengths, not delegate to titles, is a very big blind spot where appropriate. There's sort of delegation that has to be linked to titles. Then the other is really linking to psychological safety. So the thing I hear a lot from leaders is like, well, there's always silence in the meeting. No one's questioning, no one's pushing back, there's no discussion, which means you're in a lot of trouble. Because if people don't feel that they can put forward their opinions, step out of their titles and go, well, actually, I'm going to challenge the CEO on this direction because I don't think it's the right direction for our client for this project. The time frame is too tight, budget is too small, or if you don't have the courage and the bravery in your meetings to be able to challenge any title in your organization, you got a lot of problems. And that shows me that you got leaders that have big egos, and big ego leaders don't like to be challenged. But then that brings the silent tax into your organization, and we start getting death by 1,000 paper cuts because every decision is dictated and it's expected to be complied to. Now, no one human can foresee all of the different angles of the organization, the client, or the project. That's why we need collaboration, because we all come with our different perspectives and our different understanding and different education. So one of the big problems is poor psychological safety. And we need to have brave spaces, not safe spaces where emotional coddling happens, but brave spaces where we can have respectful and honest conversations about what's happening in the organization, the project, or the client.
And that leads back a little bit into the culture side of this, right? If the culture doesn't allow you to do that, then you're never going to get to that point, right?
Yeah.
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 If a CEO came to you and said, because you talk about this, and I love the concept that we're measuring the wrong things, right? Like we're measuring revenue, we're measuring all of these things that they're important, but not complete. So I guess it's not the wrong things. It's that it's measuring incomplete things. We're not measuring everything. If a CEO came to you and said, what are some of these cultural indicators that speak to profit, because that's what they're really looking for, what would you put on a dashboard? Like, what are the critical few things that you would put on a dashboard?
So the first one is, how many times are you getting pushback? How many times are you being challenged as the CEO or more senior leaders? Is that pushback or challenge coming? Is the first thing. And I get the executives that I coach to actually track that. When you put forward a strategy, a plan, a proposal, a direction, anything, how many people challenge that that's going to be the right thing? Or have we fully thought out all of the angles of this plan? Or have we missed something? So is there challenge and is there discussion happening? Then the other one, are you getting requests for help from your team? So being vulnerable and putting your hand up and saying, hey, I need a little bit of help or support here. I've got some challenges at home and I'm really struggling with this, project or whatever it is. So are you hearing requests for help and support within your team? Because that is a very vulnerable thing to say, I need help, or I need more training, or I'm feeling incompetent, because one of our basic psychological needs is to feel competent, a sense of belonging and a sense of autonomy. So for someone to have the courage to say, I need support or I need help, is a very, very good sign that you've got strong psychological safety in your team. So that's another mechanism of how many times are people asking for help, support, or guidance. And again, how many problems are coming to you with a proposed solution. So people are happy to complain. People love to complain, but the sign of a strong culture is they're like, I've identified a problem. Here's the potential solution, I think, that I would like to discuss with you. Can we have the discussion about implementing this solution? So that shows you've got an innovative culture, that people have the courage to put forward their opinions, their suggestions, without fear of judgment, without fear of getting shut down, or without fear of going someone like, what are you talking about? That's the most ridiculous solution I've ever heard. So that the problem coupled with solution suggestions is a very key metric.
I like these also for interview questions. If you turned those 3 things that you just indicated into how would I interview someone and have them relate that to me. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Hacia, I want to dive into the first 2 on that, because I found them really interesting. I love those. I love those points. So let's say you have an executive that comes to you and they say, look, I buy off on that, but I go to the team and I ask them like, hey, I want you to challenge me on stuff. If we don't agree with it, if you think that they're like, we need to have a vigorous debate, come to a solution, and then everybody tracks to it. But like, we need to have the debate, but it's silence, right? I'm not getting the feedback on that, right? Or on the second one, like the questions, like, yeah, I'm not getting a lot of questions. People are just executing it. So how does an executive enable that? Like, what's a couple tips that they can take to go and challenge that, to actually turn that on when they want the feedback?
Yeah. And it's a really uncomfortable answer. And I've had to do this myself, and it really sucks. You got to do it to yourself. So you as the leader present the strategy and you say, hey, team, this is what I've come up with. This is where I feel my limits are. I'm a little bit weak in this area. So I know this area of the strategy is not going to be the strongest because I've done it from my point of view. I need you to actually really pressure test this weak link in the chain, because I know this is where I'm weak. And I know where you, Ben, are very strong in this particular topic. So I really need you to lean into this weak link, because this is where it's going to break. I can already see that. So I need your expertise. And that's a really tough thing as a leader, to go in there and kind of almost fall on your sword a little bit and go, hey, I know this is my weakness and I need you, Ben, to lean into it for me.
So I want to add a little complication to Ben's question, right?
Yeah, sure.
Because we've all been in situations where there's this hidden cost of maybe a very high performer whose behavior is a little toxic, and they can take the breath out of a room, right? And they can make it so those other folks don't feel like they're in a safe spot. It's not the leaders, right, doing it's maybe team members. Can you talk to me a little about the hidden cost there, and how you handle some of those folks that may take the breath out of a room and kind of damper that culture down a little bit? Is it important to address that right out of the gate? Is it important to get that toxicity out of the culture? Because that's a little bit of a variable there on teams that you have to address.
It's a very important thing to address very quickly. And that's the first thing I look for when I'm coming in and consulting. I will always interview everyone that's either directly involved and usually 1 or 2 levels down, to find out where that person is. And every organization has that person. And it's kind of, if you put a rotten apple in a box of apples, they all rot very, very quickly. So it's very important to, 1, understand the triggers that are creating that toxicity. So where is this person operating from? Is it the fact that they're high performing because they actually feel very, very insecure? They might be going through something really personal at the moment that is making them feel like they need to overperform at work, because they might be going through a divorce at home and feel like they're failing as a wife or a husband or a mother or as a father. So often those are symptoms of the root cause. So I always say, do the 7 whys. Why is this person showing up like this? Have that conversation with them. Say, hey, I've identified in the meetings you speak over other people when they're trying to speak. And I really want to understand why you're doing that. With no judgment, I just notice that this is a behavior thing, and they might say, well, I think they're going off on the wrong direction. So why do you think that? Well, because I've experienced this before, and I know that they're thinking in the wrong direction, and I've seen mistakes happen before, da-da-da-da-da. So you start going to the why. Then you kind of reverse it and say to that person, That was a really important learning experience that you had in your career to actually make that mistake. And now it's put you in a position to be able to have that clarity. So why don't you give this person a little bit more space to go through their thought process and more show up as a mentor once they've finished saying, hey, from my personal experience, I went down executing the plan for the client that way, and it ended up being like really complicated, really difficult. The client wasn't happy. So from my learned experience, we should go this way. But show them in a mentoring way, not in a dictatorial speaking over them way. Because sometimes people's toxic behavior is actually coming from a good place. They just don't know how to express what they're trying to do. Another example that I will give was when I was in the construction industry, and there was a male that was very against having women on the construction site. He was very, 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 very passionate about this topic. So instead of labeling him as toxic and all of this kind of stuff, I said, hey, I love passion, and I see that you're very, very passionate about this topic of not having women on construction sites. Tell me more about that. Oh, it's very unsafe. It's this, it's that, da, 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 da. Why is it unsafe? What makes it so unsafe? And then we got to the point that he actually wasn't some kind of anti-woman man. He truly believed, because of the behavior of some of the other men on site, the lack of appropriate PPE gear for women on site, some of the lax safety rules on site, that women would actually be in severe physical and potential psychological danger. So I said to him, why don't we flip this and you actually join the safety committee, campaign for better OH&S on site, campaign for, male and female PPE gear, and make yourself known as the man on site. If other men are treating the women inappropriately, will step in and protect them. And it completely transformed how he was showing up to work. But that's because I took the space to ask the why, see where his motivation for his perceived toxic behavior was coming from, and I helped him redirect that energy. So it's the same thing. When you see toxic behavior in the workplace, do the kind of, where is this coming from? What is the motivation? And how do you redirect that energy into a mentorship, a protector, a provider, a leader style energy, instead of the toxic energy of trying to control a situation?
Hacia, it was awesome. I outlined 3 things when we did our prep call. You covered them all in different orders, but I want to summarize them for everybody, because you talked about self-leadership, right? Looking at yourself and changing yourself. We talked about psychological success and safety. And we talked about co-designing a culture to thrive. Those were the 3 points you wanted to get across. And ladies and gentlemen, we did it in a very unstructured way, but it was awesome. Hacia, if anybody wants to learn more, where should they go?
So my website is haciaatherton.com. So please reach out there. My book is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. And it's a very practical guide. So a lot of the exercises I teach leaders are in there, and I've given an example of how I apply them to myself too in the book. And then LinkedIn's a great place to reach out and connect with me as well. LinkedIn and connecting is 2 weird words to put together.
It is. Hacia, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thank you for having me.
Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full-stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software deployment and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/Meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/Meter, METER. This episode is brought to you by Adaptive Security, the first cybersecurity company backed by OpenAI. AI has fundamentally reshaped the threat landscape. Today, the greatest risk isn't someone breaking into your systems, it's someone breaking into your trust. Deepfake voices joining your video calls. AI-crafted phishing emails that perfectly mimic your executives. even synthetic job applicants entering through the front door. Adaptive Security is designed to counter these new realities. The company delivers real-time attack simulations that show security teams exactly what modern AI-driven threats look and sound like, and prepares them to respond effectively. Learn more at securityweekly.com/adaptive. All right, that was great. Now, before we get into this week's articles, I got one quick announcement. Most security conferences talk about threats. Zero Trust World lets you attack them. From March 4th to 6th, 2026 in Orlando, Florida, this hands-on cybersecurity event features live hacking labs where you'll break real environments, think like an adversary, and learn how attacks really work. You also get expert sessions, real-world case studies, CPE credits, and networking with top practitioners. And yes, the Cybersecurity Weekly team will be there too. Don't miss it. Register today at securityweekly.com/ZTW, as in Zero Trust World. All right. Articles for this week. Tried to align them. I start with CEOs and CISOs differ on AI security values and risks.
The transatlantic trust gap. What an article, right? I guess, 500 CEOs and CISOs were surveyed, and it looks like there's divergent perspectives on AI and its impact on cybersecurity, right? Where it sounds like folks in the US are a little bit more optimistic about AI and cybersecurity versus our compatriots over in the UK. But yeah, it's just an interesting article to sit and think about the differences between maybe our cultures and why we're so open. I don't know. I mean, I'd love to tease out the why around this. Why do we think it's such a divergent viewpoint between the US and the UK?
Yeah, I was correlating this back to the previous interview segment, which is she talks about asking the whys, like, well, let's get the CEOs and the CISOs to actually talk to each other and figure out the whys, and maybe close that gap a little bit. Now, the UK is interesting to me. I think Europe in general is interesting, right? In that with the privacy regulations and some of the things over in the EU, I'm wondering if that is why they think that there's limits to AI and what it can and can't do because of the way they think about the privacy data and what they really can do with AI.
Regulatory pressure is kind of giving them that perspective. Yeah, that was kind of my gut too, because they are more regulated than we are, obviously, right? So maybe that was kind of my thought too. But I don't know if maybe there were some cultural things between Europe and the US as well. I mean, the US typically has that, startup innovation kind of culture, right? I mean, that's kind of how we were born and bred, was innovation. So, I thought that could be a little underlying piece to it as well, where we're constantly pushing toward innovation and pushing that edge in the boundaries. So,
I think there's a little more acceptance of risk.
Yeah,
especially
exactly.
West Coast mentality, like acceptance to risk versus, Europe, UK specifically. I think not necessarily as being less risk averse, more risk averse, right?
Yeah.
So
I think even though we had Brexit, there's still a lot of privacy concerns, right? Shared from the EU. So that could possibly. I still was pretty shocked by the difference.
Yeah, the numbers are substantial.
Yeah,
it's not a small gap. It's a sea change.
Yeah. So Ben, you talk about risks, which ties into our second article, how to strategically balance cybersecurity investments. And what I pulled out of this one, and I see this in practice, right? Like in the brief, the first point, managing cyber risk means continuously improving program that integrates ERM, GRC, ORM, operational risk, enterprise risk, governance risk compliance, cybersecurity together. Where I see the biggest gaps right now is they're all managed as separate programs. They're not integrated together, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
100%. We talk about this here, right?
You can't make decisions in one without the other.
Right.
That's right. And I mean, this is a tie. I read the article and I said, this is a topic we've talked about many times in the past. Integrating cyber risk into the enterprise risk management system, right? At the end of the day, it's all one thing. We're talking about business risk as a whole.
Right. Because how else am I going to align my business and my cybersecurity risks together and make decisions? Am I going to spend $1 million here? Or am I going to spend $1 million there? If you don't have visibility into both of those, how are you going to make those decisions? And that's where I see the biggest challenges still in organizations, is we haven't integrated all this stuff yet.
I mean, here's the thing, right? With with change, there's always risk as well, right? And there's always the risk of when security is integrated into ERM, does it become security by committee? Does it become embedded into the bureaucracy of the business and slower, right, to remediate risk? That's that, blessing and a curse. That could be the curse to doing it, is that now you fall victim to the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
I
How do you balance that?
Back, if you look at there was a section on regulatory, right? And I think if you look at that as well, like, okay, we look at all these dispersed areas that are functional, but some of it comes from like the myriad of regulatory concerns we have, as opposed to like, do the right thing regulation. And we could all go, yeah, as long as you adhere to that, we're fine. Right. But it's no, every state has to have their own, every jurisdiction has to have their own, internationally has their own, like federal agencies have their own. It's like, I'm the amount of time anyone in a program spends trying to track down and figure out how to comply and make sure they're checking the box on all these different regulations leaves little time for actual work to get done. And I think that breeds, again, these different areas feeling like they're bound by regulatory bodies that then have to translate into some type of risk. And so we just we're not holistically focused on the problem and the best outcome. We're focused on our silos.
Right.
The only thing I did not like about this article, because I agree with Jason, like we've covered this a lot, and I know, even before I was here, you guys have covered this a lot. I don't love the idea, and it was point number 4, about being using a threat-led approach to cyber risk. And the reason I think it should be threat informed.
Yep, agreed.
But I feel that your cyber approach should be led by the goals of your organization and the crown jewels to get there.
Should be risk led, right? Not
risk appetite of the organization,
right?
Right?
And not threat led. And I did not like that part of this article. And I think it's because you're exactly right, Matt, as you say that. If you go with a risk led approach, you're integrating into the rest of the business.
Right.
If you start with a threat led approach, you're always coming at it from the cyber standpoint instead of the business standpoint.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Summer, because I see this in practice, right? Like even the terminology of understanding a threat versus a risk is still like there's still this big, huge gap there, right? People talk about threats like they're risks, but they're not. It's only one part of the equation. It's the likelihood side of the equation. It's not the impact side. And if we only look at likelihood from a threat vulnerability perspective and not the impact side, which means we understand how it impacts the business, then we never get our cyber risk fully integrated into a risk-led approach. And that is the biggest gap I still see.
Yeah, I think the challenge there is the resource side of it, right? So if you look at the risk, like the concern is always that you could have this huge risk, right? But if the threat isn't actually manifesting against that risk and they're going against a bunch of lower level risks, that you're missing the ball on where the attacks are coming from. And I think that challenges that. I've seen it on the vuln side. I've seen it on the IoT side. Like we're trying to focus on where people are going as opposed to the gap that you could drive a train through. And I think until we get the right resourcing to actually hit that, we're not going to see a big change.
Yeah. All right. So this next article, I love the concept of this. Lenny's a good friend of the show. The Insecurity Officer. What if the CISO's job isn't to maximize security, but to calibrate the right amount of insecurity?
Listen, like you said, I love the concept. Let's start speaking the language of the business. Let's talk about risk tolerance. Let's talk about ROI to mitigating risk. But we're going to need one hell of a PR person to talk about acceptable insecurity, especially when we're talking to attorneys and we're talking to insurance organizations and we're talking to the board of directors, because I would not stand up in front of a board and say, this is our acceptable insecurity. We need a marketing person to fix that, because that's not going to fly in the business, or legal, or insurance.
Yeah, that was my thought exactly, Jason.
And it's such a 180. Who do you know that actually would have the ability to actually approach it that way with a straight face?
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing I thought of when I read it. I said, listen, the concept, we talked about aligning to risk tolerance and aligning with the CFO and, the return on the investment, but I would never, ever be able to get away with coining it as acceptable in security anywhere.
I mean, if that's what we're changing CISO to, we're going to have a chief empathy officer at the top.
True. Yeah.
Just helping us handle.
My feedback is let's get someone in marketing or PR to be able to, change the title a little bit.
I don't disagree. It's the concept, right? Like, what if we just flipped it on its head, right? Which is what Lenny did in this article, right? I agree with you. If I go to my board and say, look, this is a level of insecurity we can accept, right? But let's come up with a better way to talk about it. But the concept here aligns to some of these initial articles, which is we have to negotiate some of this with the business. We have to understand tolerance for these risks and get that aligned. And that means sometimes we're not going to be the most secure. Not that we want to say we're going to be insecure, but maybe there's certain security things we won't do because we're willing to live with some of that risk, right?
Sure.
But again, it ties
100%.
back into risk. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. All right. Must-have skills for CISOs in 2026. Obviously, it's all about understanding the business and the world that we operate in. It's foundational, folks. We've been talking about it for eight-ish years.
Yeah.
Jason?
Yes. Eight years. We're running about 8 years. Yeah. Of chatting through this. If, talking about it before even being on Business Security Weekly. So, I mean, this is the forever conversation, right? And at the end of it, coming out of this, I finished this article and I said, influence, like what rang in my head, influence without authority. Like that's where we've been operating and we can't operate there. Like that has to change. We need to have the authority to make change, right? We have to. And, we're put in a position where in the bad times we can be the scapegoat, but in the good times we're kind of poo-pooed. That's not the position that the CISO needs to be in. And we need that authority. We need that influence. We need the ability to make decisions for the organization. Like a CFO would do, like a chief HR officer would do. We need that.
Yeah. Hacia talked a little bit about it in leadership is not what'd she say? It's not managerial. It's not by title, right?
Right.
Right. It's not a hierarchical structure. You can be a leader and have leadership capabilities without being in the managerial hierarchy.
Whoever has the needs of the moment versus the title.
Right. Exactly. All right. Think you are covered. Better read your cybersecurity policy carefully.
Yeah. Read it, understand it, negotiate it. That's what I would say. At the end of it, I wouldn't just accept the policy when it gets put in front of you and sign it. Read it and understand it.
Yeah, the numbers in here were a little surprising. That's why I pulled this in because I don't think people realize just some of the numbers stated. Like only 33% of policies of those responding covered a critical loss component, like lost revenue. Yeah. Only 45% covered ransomware. Like those are big numbers, and we know that cyber claims. I think only like 35 to 40% of cyber claims are actually accepted. Like the rest are rejected. So, folks, know what's in your policies because these are the out clauses that cause you grief later.
Oh yeah, I mean, so many executives, whether it's CFOs, even some CISOs, look at insurance as a safety net. Right. Yeah. Well, guess what? If you're not reading those policies, that's a safety net with a bunch of holes in it.
And you want to look
who
at
wants to go jump off the top of a building thinking they have a safety net with a bunch of holes in it? Read it, understand it, negotiate it. You can negotiate.
You need to know this before you have an incident or a breach, right? If you go into an incident and aren't prepared by what the policy covers and how it covers it, you can actually exclude yourself from things that would have been covered because you didn't do your due diligence and your work up front. Like one of those things is, you may want to use a specific firm for recovery. Well, that firm isn't on the approved vendor list for the insurance policy. So they're going to not cover it. You could find yourself with several hundred thousands or millions of dollars of expense coverage that if you had just taken the time to ask, right, ahead of that event, we'd like to use company X. Will you add them to your covered parties list? And they would say yes, right? Like, especially if it's a large party, a large vendor. But if you don't do that, then you have problems.
Right.
Ben, I was going to say, having been through, an incident and going through this, if you're a CISO listening to this, and there's one thing that you take away from the discussion of this article, is exactly what Ben just said. Walk through and think about what you would do, and say, these are the vendors that I would pull in, and anyone that ensure that it is in writing as being covered. Because it can be a nightmare. You don't want to have to wait, by the way, when the incident occurs. And secondly, you don't want to be fighting after the fact why you used someone.
And this is part of what you should be covering in your tabletop. Right?
True.
When you run through the tabletop,
Absolutely.
it's like, hey, I'm going to reach out
true.
to X vendor. Are they on the insured list?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, crap.
Well,
Right?
one of the things that, I always like to offer a little bit of feedback on the article too. This article was a lot about how policies can get voided by, things you haven't read or things that you may not have done that you attested you did. What it didn't cover is what you should be doing, right? As far as making sure you're in a model where you're taking advantage of some of the tools that your insurance agencies have. More and more insurance organizations have tools and partners and things that you can actually assess risk. Use them.
Yeah.
You
can actually theoretically, in some cases, get discounts on the insurance policy itself, or they'll have partnership with the tool vendor where you can get negotiated pricing on the tool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's
tools and service providers and all of the above. You know, so leverage what you have available to help you. You're paying for the insurance. They're offering these tools. You're getting discounts from being part of their program. Use it. Use what's available.
You don't just keep renewing the insurance policy because you've been a customer for a bunch of years, right?
I would argue most probably do.
They do.
Yeah, most do.
I bet they do.
But
you need to find a broker that you really feel comfortable with and have that broker do their job really well. And most brokers do. I mean, they're
here's the policy limitations and exclusions.
Here's another trend I've seen, though. Just so you know, guys, here's another trend I've seen. The CFO signs the insurance, right? Yeah. They're the ones doing the deal. It's not the CISO. The CISO gets handed the policy when it's already completed.
That's right. There it is, Jason. Why you need to be BFFs with your CFO.
Exactly.
So if we're going to have the chief insecurity officer and a chief empathy officer, maybe we need a chief friend officer.
Chief friend officer.
Let's balloon that C-suite out.
She's got them all covered.
Kumbaya. Kumbaya.
One other point in this article. 42% of those surveyed said their policies exclude AI misuse and liability from coverage. Yeah. So for all you people running down the AI path without thinking through any of this, just know that your policy is not necessarily there to save you.
Yep.
This article is going to be really fast. Leadership is not just about managing work. Okay. Yeah. It's carrying people.
Inspire your people, right? I mean,
I hated this article. I hated the style of it.
Yeah. I don't like the way it's written. It's all one line sentences.
I hate it.
And,
yeah.
Yep.
All right, but this
Hacia
last one.
said it best. Hacia said it best. So it's better from her.
Oh yeah, it's way better from her. Just listen to the previous segment, and you'll be fine.
That's right.
But this last article is interesting a little bit in the conversation. Succeeding as an outsider in a legacy culture. She talked a lot about co-designing culture. And when you come in from the outside, this article talks through like how do you kind of get in and understand the current culture to build the relationships so that you can actually influence the culture. And I thought this article was really, really good and a good add-on to the conversation.
It is. I mean, every company, every culture, every department that you're going to integrate with is its own fingerprint. None are going to be the same. So as a leader, you need to go in there and listen because every situation is going to have its nuance. You may get in and start taking the temperature of the staff and right out of the gate, they're like, our culture was horrible. We need to change this now. Stat. Let's go. Come in here and disrupt. What you may go into a culture where they're like, you know what? We like the way status quo was. We like that. So how do you take that and move them ahead and move them along and mature them, right? So you have to sit back. You have to listen. You have to build relationships. That's how you start, and you start taking the temperature, and then you build your strategy from there. You don't want to walk in where your team thinks they have a great culture and they've been successful and all of a sudden be like, you guys suck. You can't do that. There's no way.
Yeah. I think it's also understanding what of the core values and behaviors are negotiable and which aren't. Right. And that's working with others in the leadership team to say what's not going to change. And you can still change how you implement it, but from a culture standpoint, what is not the company not willing to change, the leadership team not willing to change.
Yeah, and I think she gave us a framework for this in the previous segment, which is ask why. Understand the why behind this, because it may look like it's a negative culture, but maybe there's some underlying issues that just need to be changed because it's perceived that way because you don't understand the basis for why the culture is the way the culture is. And her whole thing about asking the question why to kind of get to the root sometimes is what you need to do. And then you can use that to actually influence change.
Right. There's a risk, right, though? Because if you sit back and you ask why for too long and you observe for too long and you listen for too long, you start to be perceived as someone who's indecisive or weak in moving the organization forward. You may have been hired to actually be a disruptor and do things that you start to get perceived as someone who can't make decisions, right? So there's a balance there. You have to balance that out and be able to take action, right? So you can't sit there and observe and listen forever.
Right. In the startup world, you don't have time to wait.
You don't have time,
long.
right?
In the legacy, more stable, you probably
get
have
a little time. But at the end of the day, the people who hired you are going to have expectations. And if you're not moving the needle, that's going to be an issue.
Going to be an issue. Thank you for joining me today. It's great to have the whole crew back together. We need to do this more. We need to do this more often.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully next time we meet, the Patriots will be Super Bowl champions.
Oh, well, we're going to find out next Monday, buddy.
We'll see. Seattle's tough. Seattle's tough.
Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.